Welcome to the Scalable Marketing Machine podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Hajar, marketing consultant for female founders and creator of the Scalable Marketing Machine Accelerator. I've helped dozens of women grow and scale their businesses from 6 to 7 figures and beyond, helping founders like you to implement my proven growth system that focuses on brand communication, marketing strategy, building your lean team, and leadership. On this podcast, we talk all about what it takes to get to the next level in marketing and in life, focusing on practical, tactical advice that will help you grow your business and explode your revenue. Are you ready to learn? Let's dive in. This is the one thing that you need to do to avoid shiny object syndrome and to stay laser focused on the goals, the actions, the tasks that are going to move your business forward. And it is a quarterly review and planning practice for your business. That is what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to break down the exact process that I use for myself, for all of the clients, and for the founders that I coach inside the Scalable Marketing Machine Accelerator. I'm going to walk you through the exact process that we go through so you can do it yourself at home, pen and paper. Because, hey, if you're not planning for the quarter, you're going to get thrown off 100%. And if you're not reviewing what worked or didn't work with a quarterly review, then you may be going really hard in the wrong direction and continuing to do things that just don't work for your business. So this is what we're going to avoid. And I'm going to peel back the curtain on my quarterly planning and review process. So if you're new here, welcome to the Scalable Marketing Machine podcast. My name is Victoria Hajar. Here we talk all about how to grow and scale our businesses through marketing systems, processes, and a kick-ass ROI-driven team. I teach you all of that and more here on the podcast. And if you ever want a specific question answered, just simply shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. This is where I like to hang out, and I would love to answer one of your specific questions on a upcoming podcast episode. So let's talk about quarterly planning and review. I know it's not the sexiest thing. I know that it's not the most exciting thing, but it is one of those unsexy, boring habits that you need to establish inside your business. We are rolling into Q4, okay? It is almost the end of the year, which is absolutely crazy to think. And I've been doing a lot of observing the founders inside my Scalable Marketing Machine Accelerator program and other members of communities that I'm a part of, and just sort of seeing over the past couple months, especially through summer vacation, which one of the founders in my communities have sort of lost that energy and lost that momentum. Because what I've found is a lot of us that have completely sort of stopped the train during summer, it's difficult to arrancar, like to start it up again in September. Like it takes so much more effort to get back into flow. And what I'm arguing here in the podcast is that today is that by having a quarterly review and planning process in place, it sort of helps to bridge that gap and keep the momentum going throughout the year. Because in June, before the summer, when we went through this process again, what we did there is we set ourselves up for success. And the question that I was asking in June was, what is the minimum viable effort that I can put into my business while I'm on vacation, while I'm enjoying time with my family, and still keep the train running on time, right? Still keep all of the things moving. And my June planning session is really focused on that. What are the systems, or who do we need to sort of make sure that the time off is enjoyable, but that things don't slow down? The pipeline is continuously moving. But now in September, we're going to have a slightly different question. September is really about how can I turn up the heat? How can I turn up the heat on all of the processes that I know are working, all of the things I know are working, and how can I fix any parts of my overarching marketing program that are not working as well as they should or could be? Now, we should be doing our quarterly review and planning for Q4 in August, right? September, October, November is Q4. And for so many businesses, Q4 is the most important time of the year. Okay. If you're a service-based business, I've found in my own business that October and September is a really high traffic, sort of high sales moment. It's a moment where a lot of service-based businesses, people have more of an appetite to invest in themselves. It's kind of like a refreshing and a refocusing of other people's businesses. And so they're more likely to be investing in services or consultants or coaches or whatever, or even service SaaS products, for example, and solutions. But if you're a product-based business, obviously Q4 is your time to rock it, baby, because we've got Black Friday, Cyber Monday, holidays, right? Which is usually people's highest selling moments. So we really want to make sure we're going into Q4 focused, confident, with the resources that we need. So what exactly do we do? So you can do this process alongside with me on this podcast as you're listening to it. You can just pause when you have to kind of do reflection and write out some stuff. But I'm going to walk you through the process that I go through. It's super simple, right? But the most impactful things often aren't the most complicated things. They're the simple things that are simple to understand, simple to execute, but maybe not so easy to actually sit your butt down and get it done and actually go through the pain maybe of having that time cleared out in your calendar to do this strategic thinking and planning. So how do we start our quarterly review and planning? Well, we start with the review part. And if you don't have a practice of recording your data, like your most important metrics, if you don't have like a CEO dashboard or anything like that, then I would recommend taking some time to get a Google Sheet together and slap together some of your most important metrics. We're talking about sales by month. I'm talking about leads by month, even by week, even better if you can measure it that way. We're talking about, remembering, what partnerships, what are ads running, what activities are you doing that helped to tell the story of what those results were. Any information you can gather, ideally you'll have had it for the year, but at the very minimal, at the very minimum, I would say pulling the data from the last 3 months. 6 months would be better. And really understanding the story of what's going on in your business if you're not doing it already on a regular basis. And even if you're doing it on a regular basis, to knock off the beginning of this process, I would say re-engage with all of those numbers. Because the question we really want to be asking ourselves in the cold, plain light of day is, how did I do in the last quarter? How did my team, my marketing efforts do? What's working and what's not working? And often we love to jump into a quarterly review and planning with the planning part because we're so excited about all the ideas that we have and we want to execute. But I think that the review process is so important so you don't keep moving in the wrong direction. And I've been victim of this. I've moved in the wrong direction for many years because I didn't want to look at the data. Because guess what? Looking at the data sucks sometimes, especially if you're not doing you're not getting the results that you want, right? And I don't care if you've been in business for 5 years or 1 year or 10 years, right? We always have a next level that we're trying to get to. And so we're only going to do that by facing the cold, hard facts of what is actually the results we're getting. And only by looking at those numbers can we begin to, by feeling that pain, we start to think more creatively, like 1000%. And that's when we say putting in the work, that's the work, baby. Looking at that number and saying, listen, I've pulled late nights, or I've hired this person, or I've done this strategy, and it's a waste of money, or it's a waste of time, or maybe I need to adjust this or change this or look at it from this angle or improve X, Y, and Z. We're only going to do that if we're looking at unfavorable numbers or just realizing that we aren't where we want to be. So it's the most important part of the process. So again, looking at those numbers, and everything counts. I love looking at things week over week because it's easier to understand the full story. So let's say you're looking at a 3-month and you're looking at your lead numbers week over week. It's much easier to identify if you have a spike anywhere, because what we really want to understand when we're improving on a strategy is like, what were the unusual outcomes that we enjoyed. So for example, if you have a social post that happens to get a ton more engagement than other posts, if you have one week where you have a ton more leads coming in than other weeks, you're going to do yourself a disservice if you're not like looking at that and seeing what it is that you did to get those results so you could do more of whatever that was, right? So that's why this review process is so important, because we're so constantly we're just like looking ahead and just tunneling and burrowing forward. But the reality is that we need to analyze what we've done, how we've spent our time, and get really honest with ourselves when we've been moving in the wrong direction. I'll use this example because this happened a couple quarters ago during quarterly review and planning. I was with one of my favorite mastermind buddies and my business BFF. We meet once a week to check in. And she was at a mastermind and she had seen this, or she had learned a strategy on Instagram that a lot of people are getting a lot of success with. And I was so excited to get on the bandwagon and try it out. And I had never, I don't ever focus on Instagram, but I was excited, right? Shiny object on this sounds so simple, real strategy that was just like working like gangbusters for everyone. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to commit like 30 days, 60 days. I'm going to do this every single day, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't getting the results. I didn't enjoy it. And when I looked at the data, I was like, 30 days into it, not even, maybe 20 days into it, I was like, what am I doing? This is not part of my strategy, because my marketing strategy is showing up on LinkedIn, growth through LinkedIn. That's where my clients are. That's where my opportunities are. That's where I make sales. That's where I enjoy being. So I need to double down on LinkedIn. So why did I start like some Instagram strategy? Because we all, like me, like you, shiny object syndrome. We hear something's working well for someone else and we get excited. We want to try it out. We think that's going to be the key to growth or whatever. And we jump. But when we do that and we don't come back home to understanding what is our core marketing program, right? What is our core strategy here? And make sure that you stick to it, then anyway, you have to come back to it. You have to come home to it, because it is very, very easy to forget. Like, it's so easy to forget. So doing that review and realigning with the strategy that you're running, right? Now, if you ask yourself, I'm not quite sure what the strategy I'm running, don't worry, I got you, because that's the next part of the planning process, right? So once we looked at that review and we understand what we've done, another really interesting thing to look at is your calendar for those 3 months too. If we're doing the review, what meetings did you have? Where did you spend your time? This is where doing something like color coding your calendar. I always color code, like my sales calls are a certain color, my content days are a certain color, my partnerships are a certain color. So I can look and have this like clear understanding of where I spent my time, what things was I doing, where was my focus? And that also helps me understand, like, did I have the right focus? Was I taking the right actions, right? So the review is super important. But now the next thing we look at is our strategy and assessing our strategy. So every 90 days, I recommend checking in with your marketing strategy. Now, if you feel like you don't have a good grasp on what your strategy is, what I would recommend is pulling one of my free resources, which is How to End Marketing Overwhelm. And you can get that at uglyventures.com. That's ugly with an I, ugliventures.com/overwhelm. And there's a guide there that walks you through the framework that I use to create a marketing strategy. So for so many years when I started my marketing career, I've always worked with founders and investors directly. That means I wasn't working in corporate, so I didn't have, the marketing manager above me, the marketing director, the VP, whatever, to tell me what to do for marketing. Like I didn't even understand really what marketing was when I started marketing like 15 years ago, right? And when you don't really know uh, really what to do in marketing, you're just doing everything and you're just trying to see if something works. And I remember one year I got a part-time job working at a marketing agency. And that was the first time that I was introduced to this concept of the client journey. And so what was so beautiful about the client journey is the client journey are the 5 to 7 steps. There's a lot of different ways people conceptualize it. That clients go through from first knowing about your product or service to, connecting what you do to their pain points and, converting into buying customers, paying customers. So my version that I've created is called the 24/7 marketing flywheel. This is the framework that I use to create marketing strategies for myself, for my clients when I work as a fractional CMO, and for the founders that I advise in the Scalable Marketing Machine Accelerator program. Everyone is looking at the 24/7 marketing flywheel, and they're mapping out their strategy based on all of these stages. And you're saying, what am I doing for this stage? What am I doing for this stage? And when you're first starting or you have limited time or resources, you're only doing maybe one activity for each one of these stages. So for example, the first step is aware. How are you getting in front of new audiences, right? How are you consistently every day, week, month, year, reaching brand new people so more people know about what you do and who you serve, right? And how you help. That always has to be running because a lot of times you're not making sales because just not enough people know about what you do. And that's a problem, right? But in the awareness phase, there's a lot of different options. You could be focusing on growing through partnerships or through influencers or like an influencer program or through ads, right? So when you're first building out this journey, you want to look at each one of these stages, like we're talking about the awareness stage, and choose one thing to do. Go all in that you really learn and you really perfect and you know how to get results out of that strategy. And when we're going through this quarterly review and planning process, we want to make sure first, do we have a full and thriving 24/7 marketing flywheel built out in our business? And if the answer is no, then your biggest job, and they're going to turn into projects for the quarter or your quarterly goals, is to do whatever needs to get done to build out your 24/7 marketing flywheel. So for example, let's say that you have, so the first couple stages, the first 3 stages of the 24/7 marketing flywheel is aware, engage, and nurture, right? Aware, engage, and nurture. So this means aware. How am I reaching new people? Engage. How am I grabbing their attention and getting them to opt into something, whether it's a promotion, a discount, a free resource, to watch a video, to download a checklist, whatever. But we want their contact information so we can continue to build a relationship with them, right? And that's the nurture phase. So let's say that you have made some kind of lead magnet and you're showing up every day on social and you're sending weekly emails, but you realize that you don't have a repeatable way to reach new audiences. You're not doing partnerships. You're not running an SEO program. You're not trying to go viral on social media. You're not running ads, whatever. That means like your flywheel is broken in a way because you don't have anyone filtering through that top piece of the flywheel. So you're not going to be able to convert into new customers. You're not going to be able to grow more revenue, right? So your primary goal for the quarter should be, hey, we need to kick off an awareness tactic, right? And I suggest doing only one if you don't have anything going at the moment. And that may look like hiring an ads manager. That may look like putting a plan in place to execute a certain amount of brand partnership, like collabs in the quarter. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it, but it's always, like, in my opinion, the most impactful thing you could be doing is making sure that flywheel is built out. If you have that flywheel built out, then this quarterly planning and review process becomes looking at the flywheel, analyzing each stage of the flywheel and assessing what's working and what's not working, right? What are your conversion rates at each one of these stages? And when you measure those conversion rates against benchmarks, and you can easily find, so if you have, if you don't really know what you should be aiming for, you can do a quick Google search and you can just look for, landing page conversion benchmark for SaaS company, for example. And you can get some pretty good data. There's a lot of websites that that run studies and reports on what some average benchmark like conversion percentages are or whatever, and you want to measure yourself against the benchmark, right? And you can do this for all different sorts of things, like website traffic conversion, so website visitor to leaving their email, like opting in for lead magnets, or landing page conversion rates, or email opens and click-throughs and all of that stuff. That benchmark data lives online. It's easy to access. But you want to be familiar with what those benchmarks are, or historically what your performance has been, and see, like, is it working? Is it not working? Is there room for improvement? And when you identify room for improvement, then that turns into what your quarterly goal should look like. And so the point here is that when we're doing our quarterly planning, I don't want you to be executing anything for marketing that is outside of your 24/7 marketing flywheel. Meaning, I don't want you to do anything that does not tie in to your master marketing funnel, or better put, your marketing program, right? Everything needs to be connected because everything plays into one another. And that becomes your flywheel. Now, let's say that you have your flywheel built out, everything is humming along, everything's performing super well. Well, now we want to focus on depth. So each one of these 6 stages, we want to look at going deeper, right? And this is when I would give you permission to say, okay, well, let's try some more awareness strategies, right? Let's try opening up some other ways to connect and nurture our audience. So, like, a really good example of this is social media platforms. I really don't advise just spraying and praying and being on every single social platform, or at least expecting anything out of any other social platform. One thing that I like to do is, hone in on one platform that you are going to crack the code with growth and how to get leads and opportunities from that specific platform. You need to be able to, like, have gotten results and crack the code with one before you open up to another, because each platform is so nuanced, with the specific types of content and sizing and what people like and what's trending and all this stuff. It's not just you can't just spread the same kind of content across all of the channels and expect results. So, and alternatively, it makes a lot more sense for your time, energy, money, focus to be on one activity and learning all about it and growing and getting all the resources that you can, rather than trying to learn about 2 different or 3 different platforms at the same time. Because what's going to happen is you're dividing all of those resources and you're not going to have kind of strength in any of them. And the same goes true for your, if you're doing advertising, start advertising on one platform. And then once that has traction, get to another. Lead magnets, for example, don't just keep making brand new lead magnets, right? Create 1 or 2 and then do A/B testing and really refine, the offer of the lead magnet and the landing page and what does the pop-up say and all these things. Because marketing, there's so much nuance. And I think that, yes, that could feel like overwhelming on one side, but actually it gives me a lot of relief, because when you work against the 24/7 marketing flywheel framework and you understand those layers, right? Step 1, get it built out. Step 2, make sure that everything's performing, right? Every one activity you're doing for that is performing. Step 3, pick one area to go deeper, right? And that becomes your focus for the quarter. You can choose 1 or 2 activities to zone in on for the quarter. And honestly, it's 1 or 2. So another rule of thumb that I learned from a mentor and a past client that I worked with, Dan Martell, is this concept of 2 upgrades and 1 net new. So what does that mean? And I love this because a lot of times leading marketing, especially like CEOs and founders, you guys just like love to put so much project on marketing. But this concept of 2 upgrades and 1 net new is that, don't take on more than 1 like brand new net new project per quarter. And then the other 2 goals should be centered around like an upgrade. So when we talk about your first goal being to make sure that you have a full and thriving flywheel in place, right? That at least one, tactic rolling for each stage of that flywheel. Once you have that done, when we get into the improvement phase, that would be a upgrade. So let's say we have our email marketing program in place, but we're not getting the open rates, right? We need to do a real upgrade on subject lines and improve our email marketing program, right? That would be different from a net new project, which might be launching a new product, right? Launching a new offer or doing a new webinar or hosting an event or something like that. That would be considered a new, right? And these new projects often take way more time than we anticipate. So rule of thumb, 2 upgrades and 1 net new. So, okay, so there we have it. We've done a review. We've checked in with our 24/7 marketing flywheel. We've analyzed what is happening. What do we have? What do we don't have? And identified what are the actions that we need to take in order to make sure we've got a full and thriving flywheel and that it is performing favorably for us, right? We've identified 3 things. Now, remember, we're talking about marketing goals, right? And oftentimes our company has a lot of different things that are on the plate, right? Maybe we need to do something for accounting or we need to do something with the product or whatever. So that's why limiting 2 or 3 goals is really, really, really useful for marketing. Okay? Because you may have 1 or 2 goals in different areas. And this is where I've worked with companies and teams where there's 6, 7, 10 goals for the quarter for marketing, and it's crazy. And then we end the quarter and they're just they don't get done, right? Nothing gets actually finished. So identify those 3 goals, what they're going to be. And then the last and final piece, which is a really crucial, important piece of the goal planning process, which this part of the process I learned working with Lucy and Lindsay at Elevate Leadership, who are 2 fantastic founders and unbelievable leaders. And I learned the process of creating a scope of work document for the goals. And this was like a game changer because after we had the goal planning session and we identified what the 3 goals are, the next step is a couple days later, not in the same session, you identify the key contributors to a certain goal, and you have another meeting focused only on understanding the scope of work for that particular goal. And that is identifying what are all of the little steps, little tasks, little things that need to happen in order for the goal to be completed. You identify those tasks. You identify who is the owner of those tasks, of each task, and you put a due date to it. And you as a leader, that is really where you can hopefully step back and put that plan into place. Like your team can execute on it. That's the ideal situation. But what you're doing during the quarter is just checking in with the scope of work on these various goals. And sometimes it's helpful to populate all of these tasks and due dates into one like master Gantt chart or something I've done before, which I find really helpful. but usually I just pop it into a project management tool like Asana or Monday. And you're just watching and making sure things are getting done when they need to get done. You're lending support as a founder to your team if they need approval or they are stuck somewhere, they need a resource or whatever. But that's how we practically operationalize getting the goals done. And that's the process from soup to nuts. That is the process that I use. So first we do the review, right? Second, we check in with the 24/7 marketing flywheel and we assess where we are, what needs to happen, and we prioritize some actions to take as it relates to 24/7 marketing flywheel. We identify those 3 goals, 2 upgrades, and 1 net new. And then we create that scope of work for each goal. And I like to do that in a separate session because even though it sounds fast, this kind of reviewing the quarter and analyzing the 24/7 marketing flywheel, going through those 6 steps of the flywheel and really saying, okay, awareness phase, what's working, what's not working, where's our focus, what are we honing in on? Engage phase, how are lead magnets, right? Identifying and analyzing each one of those things does take some time. So by the time I'm decided what the goals are, I'm pretty wiped out and the team's pretty wiped out. And that's why it's usually nice a day or 2 later to work on the scope of work document. And a lot of folks would say like, oh, write your goal in as a SMART goal, right? Or there was another system I completely forgot. Anyway, a different way to write. Regardless how you write the goal, in my experience, what's more important is that scope of work doc. Because in order to execute on whatever it is that needs to happen, mapping out line by line what needs to happen and by when and who's responsible is the best way to operationalize it. I do, of course, support writing these SMART goals, but sometimes I've found myself getting stuck on like, how am I going to write it out? And that takes more time than maybe is even worth it. So regardless, I think when we identify those 3 goals, yes, we want to understand what success looks like, right? And usually success could mean like getting a certain thing done by a certain date or making a certain improvement to increase a percentage conversion rate or increase a sales volume or increase a lead volume or whatever. And putting those targets into those goals also very helpful. But don't get stuck on exactly how you phrase it because that may be more trouble than it's worth, honestly. So if you have any more questions or any other questions about quarterly review and planning, send me a DM on LinkedIn and I would love to address it in the next episode. We're going to continue to talk next week about quarterly review and planning, but we're going to do it more from a lens of how do we manage this week over week? So I'm going to share with you my ideal weekly marketing meeting agenda, how I kind of check in and support these goals. And also we're going to talk a little bit about measurement. So we're going to talk about building our marketing scorecard, how we can look at that week over week. And then when we get to the next quarterly review and planning, we have a beautiful marketing scorecard that will help us identify what worked and didn't work and really have that data aggregated for us to look at before our next planning session. So I hope this was really useful for you. If you thought this was helpful, please share it with a friend. It would mean so much to me to be able to share my planning process with more founders and help you guys stay focused throughout the quarter and ultimately win at marketing. I'll see you next week for the next Scalable Marketing Machine podcast. Thank you.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for sticking around with me and listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate you as an audience member, and I hope that you found this helpful. If you did like this episode, it would mean so much to me if you subscribed, if you rate and review this podcast. It helps other people know that this podcast has something worth saying. It also would be super awesome if you could take a screenshot and share on Instagram and tag me at Ugly Ventures, UGLI Ventures, VENTURES. I am always so appreciative to hear from you, and I hope to see you back here next week